Bien amigos, ahora estamos con el señor Bob Stein. Él es director del Instituto para el Futuro del Libro, un gurú de contenidos digitales, un gurú del mundo digital. Vamos a conversar con él sobre cómo ve la transformación de la humanidad gracias a la digitalización. Este es un tema realmente muy importante porque sin duda impacta a todos. Vamos a conocer sus pensamientos, sus ideas y cuáles son sus estudios. Bob, welcome to Peru.
Thank you.
Welcome to our show also.
Delighted to be here.
You have studied the digital world for years so far. Tell me your most important conclusions.
So for 30 years I've been trying to understand how discourse is changing as it moves from pages to screens. And the first 15 years we explored sort of the changing the notion of a page to include not just text and pictures, but also audio, video, and computer code. And in the last 15 years we've been really trying to understand what happens with a text when it goes into a dynamic network.
Mm-hmm. Like now we're facing a world completely dynamic. Everything is related with a link, and you can almost find whatever you're looking for in the web. So my next question...
It's hard to find everything you're looking for in the web.
Yeah, well, it's hard, but you...
No, I mean, I'm looking for love, right? And it's
well,
but even that can be found there.
Yeah, well, with that exception. But the next question, obvious, is which will be the future of the books, of the paper-based books?
The paper-based book becomes an art object. It becomes something that if you can afford to, you give it to someone because you want to give them
gift.
You want to give them something beautiful.
Yeah.
But the locus, the place of serious discussion is moving from the page to the screen. And if you want to be part of the conversation that takes place in society, then you're going to have to read electronically.
Which will be the next era in terms of convergence? People will use everything to communicate with the rest.
I think so.
How can we be managing this in the future? Because all the time we'll be texting, and what about the traditional writing, the traditional reading?
You know, most of us couldn't do traditional writing or traditional reading. You know, I mean, writing and reading were both things that were restricted to a very small group of people, you know, the rich. It's only in the last maybe 150, 200 years that reading and writing have become something that a broad cross-section of society can engage in. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing now that reading and writing are available to everybody, and we're going to have to learn how to do it. You know, my guess is that texting is temporary. You know, the machines are going to take voice input. You're not going to have to text your children. They're going to, you know, you're just going to talk into your phone and it will show up on their end. Show up on their end as a text.
Mm-hmm. But even for rich people or with resources, there's the space where you are working in the digital world and you are changing constantly, so you cannot keep focus on one single screen. You need to open a lot of screens. This is something new. This is not...
It's really different.
It's really different because 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, you didn't have 3 or 4 books and 2 magazines in front of you, but now you have different screens.
Yeah, but also 20 years ago, if I had a question, I couldn't put it up into Facebook and get an answer back immediately from 10 friends, right? I mean, yes, we have lost some of the private, quiet space that we used to have, but we've gained a huge amount in terms of for one thing, more eyes on the problem, right? When I read alone, I had to figure it out all by myself. Now I read with other people and we try to figure things out together. It's different. We have to learn new behaviors, new skills of, you know, what does it mean to read socially as opposed to read privately. But for some of us, it's worth it to figure out. And I think for our children and our grandchildren, it's going to be second nature. It's not going to have to be something they learn any more than we learned what it meant to be a private reader.
What about the brain? Is the brain changing
Sure.
all the time?
Brain is always
Absolutely,
changing.
no?
Yeah.
Yeah, but particularly in this point, in this specific point.
No, listen, the human brain evolved along with its technology, and that's going to continue. It's always going to be the case. You know, clearly the new technological basis of society will favor people with certain, physiological conditions as opposed to others. You know, I mean, the one constant in our universe is that things change. And the problem is, to me, on the one hand, we have to embrace change. That's hard in and of itself. But it doesn't mean that all change is good. Some change can be quite bad. It's really a question of whether or not as a society we're willing to look at the issues as broadly as we possibly can to understand what are the good changes that we want, what do we want to preserve from the old period, what do we want to take with us. These are all interesting and important questions that we as a society really have to decide, or else the decisions get made for us and we could end up with quite bad results.
It is easier to have relationships on the digital world rather than the physical world. I mean, I see, for instance, kids chatting and knowing with their peers without problems, but maybe in the classroom or in the social club or whatever, it's not the same process of socialization. But do you think people is relating to each other in a different way? Digital world is changing the way people get new relationships and finally face their new opportunities in life in terms of relationships?
I think that the internet, the age of print, our very concept of the individual emerged with print. And what's happening now with digital technology is that the age of the individual is giving way to the age of the collective. We're going back to a tribal society but the difference is that in the old days, your tribe was people who lived on your block, as it were.
Yeah.
Whereas now our tribe can be distributed around the world. And this is a very complex and new experience for us as humans. We're needing to learn to live in many, many levels. In the immediate physical present, in the immediate global present, but we also have a global presence which isn't immediate, because I can leave a message for you tonight on the internet and you can answer it tomorrow.
Yeah. Time to answer, right? It's dramatically different.
So these are all new behaviors. You know, we're learning as humans. As humans, always learn how to adapt to new conditions. The internet is a new condition. It's a profound and important one, and we're learning how to live with it.
It's a real challenge be able to find who is in your tribe in the world. I mean, because finally you can know all the people who live in the same block or maybe the same cavern, right? Because you are seeing each other.
Right.
But what about people who live in Australia and could be maybe part of the same tribe? So
I think we find
how can you recognize?
I think we find each other because I'm interested in knitting, and I go to I'm not actually, but I go to a site on knitting, and suddenly somebody in Australia comes onto the same site, and she says something that's interesting to me, and I respond to her, and suddenly we're exchanging messages back and forth. The internet provides an infinite variety of ways to meet people of like minds, and I think it's exciting, actually.
If you were to tell me something about the future, I know it's very difficult, but if I invite you to explore the future, which will be the most important trends in terms of writing, in terms of reading, and in terms of relationships?
Yeah. So you and I grew up thinking that reading was something you do by yourself, and that writing, that these are solitary experiences. Our children, grandchildren, are going to grow up thinking that reading and writing are things you do with other people, that there's no reason to do them alone, that they are part of the social fabric.
The private reading, the way we learn things when younger, is the private reading changing? Will it disappear in time?
I think pretty much, yeah. I don't, you know, there's almost no, so why do people write books? They write books because they want to put ideas out into the world that they want people to think about.
Yeah, this is Twitter.
Yeah, but the reason for putting ideas out there is because without ideas, humanity can't, there's no progress. We can't go forward. And I think that it's fantastic that to think that in the future that these ideas are going to be multiplied by the number of people who are talking about them. The more that we can use the books of the future to encourage conversation, to encourage people to confront the important questions of the day, the better shape we're going to be in as a society.
And what about the channels? Because in the old days, we have had different channels. Almost every press could be a channel. But now there's a power, a concentration of huge channels, and they could, I mean, win the war.
Yeah, but if they win the war, humanity loses the war. You know, I mean, it actually, if the big commercial forces are able to suppress change, then pretty much humanity's opportunity to move forward is going to disappear. In other words, there's now the structures of the old society are the obstacle to finding out what these new technologies can do for us.
And this had happened in a very short period of time.
No. Yeah, but we're entering a period that could be hundreds of years. In other words,
without changing itself,
well,
dramatically.
You know, so print comes out in 1454. It isn't until 1789 that the French basically kill off the aristocracy. Right? It takes 250 years for the new emerging capitalist class to cement its position in society. You know, so if you think about the digital era starting maybe 75 years ago, we're very early in. The big changes are going to come in the next 100, 200 years, I'm afraid, not in the next month, not in the next 5 years.
So we won't see the change.
Some,
we will
not. Your children may.
Well, let's see. Bob, thank you very much for staying with us tonight, and congratulations for your conference.
Thank you very much.
Telefónica.
Yes, the Telefónica Foundation was very, very generous in bringing me down here. I'm very excited to be here on their behalf.
It's great to know that you have shared your thoughts among Peruvians.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bob Stein es el director del Instituto para el Futuro del Libro, un gurú en contenidos digitales, un gurú en el mundo digital que estuvo con nosotros, invitado por la Fundación Telefónica. Señores, tras la pausa, volvemos con más aquí en Mundo Empresarial.